Okay, Jerry. Now, most of us, nearest we probably get to a gangster, probably thankfully, would be watching it on the telly. It all seems quite glamorous. I mean, what was your sort of social strategy when mixing with like underworld figures?
Always show respect, always keep eye contact with the person, because these people were used to being, they were important and they were used to being treated as important. Be respectful and don't ask any questions. Empty vessels make a lot of noise. Just be quiet and know your place. That would be my strategy, and I think that is, in life, pulling a chair out for someone, showing that respect, and being prepared to do anything that was within reason, that was asked of you.
I mean, but we're talking about associates of the Cray twins and Mad Frankie Frasier and people that everybody's heard of.
Well, Frank Fraser, for example, was one of those people that seemed to me in Underworld. I worked for a lot of Underworld characters. I've worked for modern day, some of the biggest people involved in the Underworld, and I've worked for a lot of the older generation. But obviously, when I met Frank Fraser, he was somebody that I hadn't even seen in books or anything. I didn't know anything about it. I was only a very, very young man. But it was very funny how it particularly panned out. Again, it was Folkestone, and I was there with, you know, the governor. I was there with Lights John Herndl, and he was there punting. And he said, "Are you free in a fortnight's time, Jerry?" He said, "I've got a friend of my father's who's coming to the races, and I want somebody to look after him." He said, "I can't because it interferes with what I'm doing with my horse's stuff." He was, you know, he was often there with Dudley, and they were doing things together. They were very, very busy and doing. He said, "But I'd like to look after somebody for the day. It's a friend of my dad's, and he's an old sort of character, real character, but it's quite an underworld figure. And I think you'd just do really well with him, and you'd get on with him. Show him plenty of respect. Let him do what he wants to do. If he wins, pay him. I'll give you money. If he loses, don't ask him for it." And I said, "Well, that's a good game." I said, "Oh, don't pay when you lose and draw." He said, "Oh yeah, no, I like that." I said, "I'll be in that." He said, "Listen, shut your mouth." He said, "And don't get clever." He said, "Listen, I'm giving you a proper job here." He said, "And it'll be good pay." I said, "What do you mean good pay?" He said, "I'll give you 100 quid. Just a lot of money to me. I said, "Yeah, no problem at all." He said, "But don't argue with him. This isn't somebody that you argue with." And I said, "Well, I'm not cantankerous. I'm not going to." He said, "I'm just marking your card because it could go wrong." And I said, "How many other people have you asked to do this?" He said, "No, I'm not so sure that other people particularly want to." He said, "But you've got it." He said, "You know what you're like. You got a bit of Plymouth Argyle about you. You got a bit of style. And of all the kids," he said, "I'm putting you up for it." Now, it was around that time you did I know you've done things with a friend of mine, Rucker. Rucker obviously spent a lot of time around John, and we both came up from that sort of school and period, and we were both good friends. He was closer to John Rucker probably than I was, but I was also very close. So I felt quite privileged because maybe he could have asked, you know, somebody else to do this, so I took it on board. Anyway, the day came. I got there nice and early, about 11:30. It was a national hunt day, you know, standard Folkestone day, a bit dreary, a bit overcast, and I'd made a big effort. I got a lovely, nice riding mac. I looked the part and everything. And I thought, right, I was told to meet him at the coffee bar at Folkestone Racecourse. Now, anyone who knows Folkestone Racecourse old days knows the coffee bar used to be like a white, painted sort of wooden sort of like building, almost look like an American home, sort of like something you see in Louisiana or something, all boarded. Funny old place. It changed, it went over the other side. I came in and I walked straight into the tea bar. And at the bar was a man no bigger than 5'2", 5'3", with a shopping trolley, a black hopper shopping trolley. And he was standing there and he was just looking at the floor. I walked past and I thought, this has got to be him from the description. And I said, "Hello, sir, sorry to bother you. I'm Jerry, Bulb's friend," because we used to call Lights Bulb as well, Johnny Lights. And he said, "Oh yes." He said, "What'd you say your name was?" I said, "Jerry." He said, "I'm Frank." He gave me his hand. It was like a block of concrete, like an iron handshake. And I said, "I'm here to help you, and I can do anything you want me to do, like as regards putting bets on running around for you." He said, "This is my day out, Jerry." He said, "John's invited me as a guest." and I'm looking forward to it. He said, so make it as pleasurable as possible, and don't let me down. I said, I won't let you down. He said, you got a race programme? I said, yeah. He said, you got any prices? So I thought, hold on a minute, this is someone who doesn't know anything about horse racing, and he's virtually asking to see a twist card. For those people that don't know, that's the Tic Tacs used to have the twist cards with the prices on. At that time, I'd got no idea of the odds on the first race. So I went out, and I think I went to Billy Brown. I think it was Billy Brown. I don't think Rocky was there. There was only one small ring the other side, so the Tic Tacs weren't needed. But I think Billy Brown was there, and I said to Bill, what price are these horses in the first? Billy Brown, one of the greatest Tic Tacs, one of the legends of the fall in horse racing in this country. You know, there doesn't get any bigger again. Marvellous. And he said to me, Jerry, these are the prices. And I said, well, they've got to be right. I said, because Lights, his mate's there. He said, John's just told me, Frank Frasier. He said, you know what I said, no, I don't. He said, oh, that's a hard job you've got there today. He wrote the prices down on the card for the first race. He said, come back after each race. I went in and I said, there are the prices. So he looked at them, he said, this one here, he said, 7 or 2. He said, 80 quid. I said, no, it's all right. I said, we don't have to worry about that now. Anyway, 10 or 15 minutes before the race, he said, what price is it now? Standing next to me. I said, 6. He said, we can't win, can it, because it's drifted. I said, well, I wouldn't know. He said, listen, don't be a fool all your life. He said, I'm telling you, horses that go from 72 to 6 don't win. He said, I'll watch it, but I'll guarantee you. Anyway, it was tailed off. So he said, listen, I don't know much about this game, but I do know that drifters don't win. So there you go, I've got to give you. I said, no, you haven't got to. No, it's fine, we're fine, we'll carry it over. This next race, I've gone out and got more prices. Even something, 7 or 4, 8, 25. £100 on this one, number 8. So I've gone out to Lights. I said, he's the favourite, even 100 quid. He said, oh, please God, it wins, he said. The scream, he said, all I want him to do is have a day out and go back with something and not, I've ordered a taxi to pick him up at the end of the day. Anyway, it jumps 2 or 3, it puts in a bad jump halfway round, tailed off. I went back in, he said, is that how even money chances run, is it? No wonder I don't come to these toilets. He said, what a joke, he said. I said, it's not my fault. He said, listen, I told you, don't get fresh with me or lemon with me. Of course, whose fault is it? It's not my fault. I'm out for a day out, and things aren't going the way I want things to go. I said, I'm sorry about that. Go and find out what prices are for the next race. I'm going to have a good go here. Brought the prices back again. 5 to 2 the field race. He's picked a 4 to 1 shot. He said, what about this one? 9 runners. I said, well, as I say, I don't know one sort of real horse from another one. I don't want to be giving you tips. 120 quid, he said, on that one. So I went back out, I said to Light, he's had £120 on that one. He said, oh, please God, it runs well. Anyway, it was 10 lengths behind me, 2 at a jump. It closed up to about 4 lengths behind at the last. All of a sudden, we thought it might have some sort of a volley. Up the run, and the other one in front just went on hands and heels and beat his 1 2 lengths. He went, you're a bock. I said, sorry? Well, that's saying. He said, you're a bock. He said, don't stand too close to me either. By this time, the hairs on the back of my neck are standing up. I've looked over to him, and in the rain, he's been outside. All the hair dye has come down the side of his face and into the side of his mouth. He looked like something out of a Hammer House, a horror film. It was menacing, and I was almost tearful. And I said, I'm sorry, but it's not something that I've got any control over. He said, go and get me the prices for the next race. Do you want a cup of tea? I said, no. He said, miss, he just called everyone, large brandy, please. He said, I'm dealing with someone else. He said, you didn't hear me. He said, large brandy, please, miss. She came over, got in the brandy. I went back out. Now, when I used to get the Cohen card and the good Gifford things, they were good naps. And there was a Josh Gifford horse in the race. It was 4 to 6, and it was a good front runner. And I thought to myself, well, if ever obviously I'm going to blood myself and say something's a good thing or a certainty, I should say this one. So I said to Lights, this will win, John, won't it? He said, yeah, but don't go putting yourself to the front, son. He said, making yourself a lad, because if it gets beat, he said, honestly, he said, you'll have spit all over your face, he said, and it will go wrong, and don't get involved. Just ask him what he wants to do and get on with it. So I went back out, I said, listen, I said, there's the prices. So he said, oh, a short one. He said, I like a skinny one. I love a skinny one. He said, yeah. He said, win, second win. I said, well, I put on for this yard as well a little bit. They were never a gambling yard, the Gifford yard, but a lot of good punters knew their horses would run straight, so they used to bet them with impunity. He said, this will win, won't it? I said, well, you know, I would think. I said, I like a short one. I said, you know, I said, for me, I said, if I was going to put will you put your pocket money on that, would you? I said, yeah, I'd put the lot, I'd go all in. He said, oh, he said, big talk. He said, you're committing yourself. He said, go on then. He said, look. He said, how much am I losing? So I totted it up and I said, oh, £300 or something. I tell you what, he said, why don't you put 250 quid on it for me? We'll see how we go. Anyway, I went back out, lights, ball went after, he went fucking, he said, I've had a few quid on this, it's now 9 to 4 on, so they're all on and everything. So I said to John, please God, just jump round to win. Anyway, it goes to the front, and it's one like an odds-on chance should pull in a dairy float. It's gone 10 in front, and it's 120. So he's given me the money, I've gone back in, I said, there you go, Frank. I said, good, isn't it? He said, yeah. He said, it's nice to back a winner, isn't it? He said, did you back it? I said, yeah, I did. Right, he said, now we've got some ammo. So I thought, hold on a minute, ammo? You're still 50 quid probably or 60 quid behind, because obviously you don't pay when you lose and you draw when you win. Good game. So it was the last race on the card comes up, and he says, right, this one here, 5-2 favourite, I'll have 150 quid on. So I went out to Lars, he's bet the favourite. He said, well, he's picked well. He said, because I've got two good leads into 2 yards and they fancy their one. He said, so we're actually going to back that one too. Anyway, that's one. So obviously he's got his 150 quid at 5-2. He's had a good winner, and I've gone back in and paid him. He said, thank you, he said, for a lovely day. He said, I've had a really, really good day. And he said, because you've been a good little boy, he said, there's 60 quid for you. I thought, good little boy, I was 6'2", he was 5'3". And I said, oh, thanks for that. And he said, it's a pleasure. He said, now run along. And I opened the door, and he pulled his trolley through, and a black cab came. He said, I know they're here, he said, because my friends told me they'll be waiting. I opened the cab door for him, put him in it, and the cab drove away. And that was my meeting with Frank Frasier. And I have never, ever in my entire life met anyone so intimidating. And it's true what the story is. You don't become a legend, do you, in the underworld thing by just being an enforcer if you're not. And for someone that small, so diminutive, to be so powerful and to be so, his presence was eerie. It really put shivers up here.
Now, you were sticking on for big punters in those days.
Yeah.
I thought everybody could get on in those days. So
Well,
why did they need you?
Well, they needed me because most of the people that I put on for had to be faceless. If they were betting, if they were known to be betting, they were connected to big yards. They were successful people who could move the market if they put their own bets on within seconds. Their presence. I put on for a lot of people who never came to a racetrack. They were so big. They not necessarily when I mean big. They were so influential that when they were seen, they were linked to certain stables, and it would automatically tell you that that particular horse later on was off. And don't forget, this was pre-exchanges, so people only had to get the inkling about a horse later on, and that was running that day, and they'd be sniffing around bookies asking to, what prices horses were. And with me, bookies used to tend to take my bets because they didn't know who they were turning down. I never told them who I was representing. The only person I did occasionally tell who I was representing would have been Tony Morris at the Dogs, because when he used to say, is it anything for me, I'd say, no, this isn't for you. And I suppose it was a bit like a sieve, really. I would try and give the losing bets to my friends, and I'd try and give the winners to people that I had no connection to. But I bet quite heavily myself. I built a big tank up. At the end of the 80s, I had probably a tank of around nearly 100,000, probably 90, 100,000. It's a lot of money. It'd be over $1 million in our day. And I used to normally have 2,000 or 3,000 quid on. I could have £10,000 on. I could have 20,000 or 30,000 pound on if I had it. I was an inveterate chaser like I still am now. If I go to the horses, if I back a couple of losers and I'm hotted up, I'm going to just go skin, because that's how I am. The shorter the better. There is no price that I'm known. My nickname's Odds On. They say, oh, Jerry Glasses. No, my true nickname's always been Odds On, because if people say, oh, Jerry's never backed anything over 3-1 in his life. I have, but it's a rarity.